Hey everybody! Kind of a little frazzled tonight. It is Thursday at 8, and Jill Wolf here is very excited to continue my series called Using Play to Improve Writing. And tonight our focus is video games. Yay, 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 yay! And so I have to say, I don't know how many of you have read the book Ready Player One. But it is about a world in the future where there's a massive digital world and everything happens in that space because the physical world has become so overpopulated and there's so many people and so many everything that all of work, all of school, all of social interaction, like everything takes place in that world, that digital world. And so the guy who created it has passed away. And he left a challenge out to the whole world that in the world he created, he left 3 keys. And to the individual who finds those 3 keys, he will leave his entire inheritance, which is, he's worth, millions and billions of dollars. So the whole story then is about this young boy and his journey as he pursues finding these 3 keys and his kind of joy and a little obsession with understanding the creator of this world and the world itself and all of the space in it. He's up against corporations that are spending tons of money to pay for players to try to find the keys so they can inherit it. And it's got a lot of action and really, really, really interesting. A friend of mine recommended it to me about 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought, oh, and I got going. It was awesome. Well, anyway, the whole reason I'm bringing it up is that it opens tonight in theaters. Spielberg did it, and it looks absolutely fabulous. So because tonight's theme is video games, I just thought I'd throw out that if your child is, let's see, reading level-wise, I would say at least junior high, probably a high school book. It's close between 300 and 400 pages, pretty dense reading. And I can't remember, I don't think there's a lot of adult content in it that's inappropriate, but there's some language and it's in the future and some kind of violent things happen there. So just a heads up. But I think a high school kid could get through it and enjoy it. I think a boy, it would be great for a young boy, a high school boy to read, especially if he likes games. And with this movie coming out, it gives you more writing opportunity because now you can look at comparing the book to the movie, which I will be doing in all of my excitement about bringing the improvement of writing through play. So for those who don't know me or don't know me well, I'm Jill Wolf, learning specialist. I help homeschool parents plan meaningful experiences to awaken the learning. And tonight we're focusing on the learning that happens through play. Specifically the kind of learning of improving writing. And so video games, wow, this is a big one. I was not a huge video game player when I was a kid. I remember Pac-Man and just a few. We never owned a gaming system. I didn't even like arcades, however you say. And so gaming to me was always, like video gaming seemed so separate from me. But I played board games. I played tons of board games. And so when I think of the word game, for those of you who are like me and you're not really a video game nut yourself, you wouldn't consider yourself a gamer. I know there's a group called Mama Gamers. Yeah, I wouldn't be in that, and you may not. So I would say this, think of a game that you played growing up, and there was always something to learn from it. Monopoly, cash flow, life, even Twister. You had to know your colors, you had to know how you could stretch, and a little bit of strategy of how I was going to try to knock this person. So every game has things that you actually learn in it. And so I want to encourage you, this is not a live tonight on what you can learn in a video game, but I want to encourage you that if your kids do like video games, there's actually a lot of learning going on. The first kind of writing you can have them do is, what are you learning in your video game? Very general. It kind of opens up an opportunity to have a debrief with them, conversation about, what kinds of things are you engaging in and choices you're having to make such that you are learning something in your game. So I think that every game has a potential for there to be some learning. Video games in general are incredibly huge right now, incredibly huge. My ultimate goal is to design a massive digital learning space with a game model, which I will tell you about some other time. But because of that, I value what can be experienced through a video game. So I'm going to kind of break it down of how we can look at writing from a video game tonight, okay? And so if you're joining me live, I want you to go ahead and put your questions in there or your comments or just say hi. I would love to know when you join me, okay? All right, so the way I'm going to do it tonight is I'm going to line up the kinds of things that are in a video game, the kinds of writing you can do, and then we're going to look at how each of these can be a part of that other thing. And writing, let me just tell you, kids are playing video games at 4 years old, not 4 in the afternoon, 4 years old, and obviously at 4 they're not writing. But the precursor to writing is talking about it. The precursor to writing is being able to share my ideas and either just a discussion or I make a video or, and as the parent writes, as the child says what they're saying. So this can work with any age, the kind of writing you're going to have them doing and the thinking work towards that writing will only vary based on age or the kind of game they're playing. So let me also, one other side note, there are so many video games out there, a wide range. So today I'm just going to throw out a lot of generalities. And most of these are general enough in their kind of writing that you could apply it to any game your son or daughter are playing. And how this will be good is then you can get to know the game they're playing and what they're doing in it through doing writing here. All right, so let's get started. So down this side. So first of all, I gotta tip this up. Can you see me okay there? A little technical adjustment here. Okay, because I'm going to be writing. I want you to be able to see me. Okay. So in every video game, there is a world. Okay, and this world may be Germany in 1945 at the end of the war. It might be ancient Egypt. It might be Paris, France. It might be a science fiction one, so it's a galaxy far away. It might be another planet, or it could be Earth in the future. So there's all sorts of, and we, you know, in the story world, we call that setting, okay? But there is a world, and in that world, every world is essentially a setting, a location, a time, a period, a culture, and it has a set of rules of how things operate there. In our current life, it would be considered the culture, and we have certain cultural norms and rules, but in the world of a game, there are certain rules of how your world works, and there's some great writing that can come out of that. There is also characters. Some of these characters are you, the player. You have some kind of avatar, and you are one of the characters in the story. And there are other characters. Some are enemies. Some are friends. Some are mentors. Okay, you got all these other kinds of characters going on in your game. You have the concept of leveling up. Now, whereas the world of sorts and the character are also things you'll find in any narrative story, film, short story, novel, any books they're reading are going to have those things. You don't have leveling up. Leveling up is very unique to games, specifically video games. And so it's moving. I do something to qualify to move to level 5, to level 6, to level 7. And, let me go back to Avatar. So leveling up, what reminded me is that when you, let me tip, there we go. I just don't want you to see my messy room, office. when you level up, there's some reason that you're leveling up. And frequently it's because your avatar has done something. They call those stats. Somehow their stats have changed in a way that they now qualify for the next level. And these stats, sometimes they're talked about as strengths and weaknesses. Okay. Overall, I didn't say this, there's genre of kind of game. That's the big picture. And these are the ones that we kind of have heard. Like, is it a first-person shooter? Is it a strategy game? Is it a free world with all this building and design space? Is it an RPG? Yeah. So we know these genre names, but most of us don't know what those mean. So, but the kids do that are playing these. So genre, world, characters, there's leveling up, and there is choices. And leveling up and choices are what are very unique to video games over any other kind of story medium. So all of these kinds of things lend themselves to writing that I can do. So I'm going to look over here and I'm going to say, here's the kinds of writing I'm going to throw out. There's descriptive writing. Okay, so let's talk about some descriptive writing that I can have my child do. I'm going to have you describe the world. Now, there is a physicalness to it that I can observe and see. It's very visual. So the setting is visual. Okay, so I'm going to actually have you describe the world. How does it look? How does it sound? I want you to describe for me the culture. You can introduce that word culture, but describe to me the culture or how things work, the rules of that world. Trying to think of an example that's not going to be so specific that if you don't know the game, it's not helpful, but they will know what you mean by this when you say, describe for me the world and what you see. Now, if they're struggling, especially if they're younger, with, I'm not sure I understand what you mean, then have them pull up the game, go sit down with them and say, look, I'm going to have you play for half an hour. While you're playing, I'm just going to watch and take some notes. And then we're going to come back to this writing I'm going to have you do, and I'm going to help you see these things. Okay? So I watch for half an hour and I see, oh, the world it happens in space. There's these planets. You get to choose what planet you live on. You have to establish a home, blah, 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 blah. So you're going to get to see all of it. In a half-hour play, you'll see enough that you can come back and help them figure out. You can ask them the questions and point them in the direction of what you mean by describe the world to me, okay? I want you to describe the enemy to me. Now, not every game has an enemy. Some of your free building games, it's not maybe as obvious. In those, it's more parameters. I only have so much money I can spend. I know there's a game called Sims, and you essentially are building like a town or a civilization or a home, depending on the Sims you're playing. And your only limitation really is that, for many of them, is how much money that you have based on some of the choices you made at the beginning of the game, how much money you have to spend to build the stuff. And so it's not an enemy, it's more a parameter. So what am I going to put? I'm going to put that would be here under rules, is that there are some parameters and rules in some worlds, okay? But in others, there's an enemy, there's a bad guy, and I want you to describe him to me. There is describe. Well, I'm gonna move on. There's explain. Now, explain and describe are a little bit different. Explain is a little bit deeper, a little bit more. Okay, here's an example. If I said I want you to describe the process to wrap a gift, I might say I need paper and tape and I put it around it, and that's what wrapping a gift is. If I want you to explain how you wrap a gift, then there's going to be a little bit more to it. That's kind of not the best example because it's procedural, but descriptive and explain are just different in how deep they go and what they, and the kind of thinking they have to do to get there. So, for example, an explain might be, I want you to explain to me how you leveled up. So I watched you play for a half an hour, or you were just playing for a half an hour, and I saw you move from level 10 to level 11. I want you to explain to me what you did to level up. Now, that kind of writing is actually going to take a little pre-writing thinking work. I've got to think about, okay, what was it that got me to level 10? Here's where I'm at now, and then here's where I moved to in level 11. What did I do? Was it just that I moved my troops and we conquered this, enemy camp, and so that leveled me up? And that raised my stats in such a way that I leveled up. So stats and strengths are going to play some part in that, but they've got to consider, what is it that made me level up here? And they've, as a whole, most people know kind of what they did to level up, but they've never really explained it to somebody unless they're creating videos and different things like that. So you're going to ask your child, I want you to explain this. Now, they could do this in words with you in conversation. So if they're struggling with getting it written on paper, then start with a conversation. And maybe you collect some of the bullets of what they say, and then you say, okay, now I want you to go write it. And somebody say, well, why do you want me to write it? We just talked about it. Well, my purpose really is I want to improve your writing, and I'm trying to pick topics and things that are interesting to you. I mean, I could assign a really boring topic to write about, but I want it to be about something you're intrigued by. So that's why we're taking it to the writing level. So yeah, you can explain it to me in words. I'll jot down some notes for you, or you can even jot down notes, or we can record it for you. And then you take that and you go back, hey, Karen, this is your field. You love games. So pipe in here. But explaining how to level up is what I'm on. But again, all of the things you've used before, if your child needs support in the writing process, use those. So if you want to discuss the ideas before and you yourself write down their comments or their bullets, or you record it so they can go back and hear what you talked about and the ideas that they had, then go ahead and do that here. But the ultimate writing goal is for them to explain how they leveled up. What did they do to level up? They can explain a choice that they made. So you watch them play and you're like, I noticed you did this. You made this choice right here. Yay, video games. You made this choice. And when you did, I noticed this happened. Why did you make that choice? So, for example, I'm in some kind of military game that I'm playing, and I'm the commander in charge of all these armies, and I choose to move my guys to the flank. I'm married to an Army vet, and I don't even know what that means, flank, but whatever. So you chose to do this. Why? Why not this way? Why not head on? Why did you make that choice? And I want you to explain it to me. Well, part of explaining any choice is understanding what the choice was. I had a choice between A and B, or A, B, and C, and I chose A. Why did I choose A? It wasn't random. And a lot of times in games, they're going so fast that it might feel random, but it's not. There's some thinking behind why you made that choice. I want to know what that was. I want you to dig into it. So we're going to go back to when you made that choice in the game, because it yielded something, and had you gone to the right instead of the left, what would have been different? But I want you to explain to me why you made that choice. Okay, so this is just some explaining type of writing you could do. You can have them explain their stats and their strengths to you. So, I'm still learning about your game, and so I want to understand. I want you to explain to me, you're on a level 11. You're on level 11, and here's your stats, and here's what this is saying is your strength and weakness. I want you to explain what that means. What does that number mean? What does it mean that you have 300 of this and 200 of this and none of this? Why do you have none of this? And they're going to have to think about, well, that's just how it started. What do you mean that's how it started? Well, I got to choose these things up front at the beginning, and I chose to have 0 of this and 300 of this. Okay, so you've explained to me now why you have the numbers you have. Now, an explanation then begins to get into what I call implication. So what is that? What is the implications of that? When you made that choice at the beginning, so you had these choices and you made them, that's affected this, and now there's some implication in the game. You chose to be a healer and not a warrior. What's the implication in the game? Explain me the implication of the choices you made about your stats so you can start to link these. Now, as a parent, I'll be honest, at first you just need to kind of learn how their game goes. So before you can start to link up some of these in the questions that you're asking for them to write about. But you'll get there and you'll actually find that some are quite intriguing. Some you might go, oh my gosh, why do they want to keep playing that? But others you'll find, wow, I didn't even realize it was all that there. So some good learning on your part too. But anyway, back to this. Explain reaches then into the implications of whatever it is that I'm writing about. All right, the third one is comparison. To compare, comparison writing. Now, I know growing up we heard compare and contrast, compare and contrast. Compare implies contrast, just so you know. If all I want is for you to tell me the differences, then I say contrast. If I say compare, I want the similarities and the differences. Just a clarification for any future when there's some prompt that you guys are addressing, but that's compare. So I'm comparing two things, and I'm comparing them for some purpose. So there's a ton of things I could compare. I want at least of which is compare two games that you play. So I'm going to put that here and say another game. I want you to compare this game to this game. You play both of them. That's a big potential piece of writing that they're going to be doing there. They got to consider what are the things that are similar, what are things that are different in all aspects, the world, the characters. And I didn't even put on here the action of the game. Compare the action, like what's happening in this game. What actions can I do as a player in this game versus this game? Some have different games because they engage with them very differently. And so they like that there's a wide variety. That's some kind of players. But others like, oh, I have all these military strategy ones because I feel like I learned from each of them to help me in the others. Very different reasons why they would play multiple games. So that could be an explain. Explain to me why you're playing 3 games. But the compare is, I want you to compare them for me on a deep level. I want you to compare the world and the rules of the world. Or I want you to compare your avatars, your character that you're playing. I want you to explain how they're different in this game and what that means. You could compare. Okay, so I didn't draw all my lines here. I don't want this to get too confusing. I'm comparing my characters. I can compare the rules of the game and how it's played. I can even, in general, compare genres. Although, in all honesty, nowadays, a lot of games are bleeding the genres together, so they're not quite as strict. But you could say, you know, you have these 2 games that seem really different. Can you compare the kinds of games? That's even bigger than comparing 2 games. Okay, you got comparison going on there. And then last, but certainly not least, we have analysis or analyze. Okay. An analysis is a really hard type of writing, just so you know. Probably most kids younger than 9th or 10th grade don't do analysis well. They can do they can explain things. Even getting to implication is tough. I can compare things, but to really analyze, it's looking for patterns. It's looking for strategies. It's looking for motive. Its analysis is quite deep. So just know that you're not going to do analysis with younger kids, and that's okay. But analysis can get to things like this. I want you to analyze for me what worked and what didn't work when you moved from, and when you played level 10. Now, oh my goodness, what does that mean? Well, I have to consider, what were my actions, what were my choices, and what actions came of those? And could I have played it better? If I'd made different choices, how could the game have played out? So your analysis can get into, if you were to play it again, what would you do differently? I want you to analyze your play. You call it gameplay. I want you to analyze your gameplay so that I understand why you made the choices that you made and whether you felt they took you where you wanted to in the game. Can you see why I'm saying it's for a lot older child? Because it really digs in deep. And a lot of times younger kids aren't necessarily in touch with all the choices they made, all the actions that came of that, and why they made those, and how things could have been different if they made them differently, and what patterns are they seeing in their play. All of that kind of thing is analysis, and they're not going to be able to get to that, and that's okay. They'll get there someday. Let's see, analysis. I can analyze the role of the mentor. Did that mentor actually help me? So there's a character and an Obi-Wan, for lack of a better metaphor here, of the game, and I want you to analyze how helpful they were to you as a mentor. Now, some of that could be, did the game set it up so the mentor could be really helpful? And then there is, did you as a player use it as much as it could have been helpful for you? So some of it is design on the game's part, and some of it is on use in your part. But was that mentor a helpful part of your game? You could analyze how your character is changing. You know, in any really good film, you're going to watch a character go through a character arc. They're faced with some kind of challenge. They're faced with a huge obstacle in their life, something deep about who they are that's holding something up, and they have to face that through the story, and all these different things are in the way, and they overcome this, and they're challenged by that, and they feel defeated here, and you just see this arc as they change. Really good films have a character that does that for us to see, and the best ones actually have that for multiple characters. But in a game, some of that is built in over time. Your choices affect that and how they change. But certainly if you've moved up 10, 20 levels, your character, your avatar is in a different place than you started. So to say, I want you to think about where your character started, where your avatar started, and where you are now at level 20 or level 25 or level 12, whatever they're on. And I want you to think about, how did your character change? What has changed about them? And what about this game has changed them? And in some games, this is going to be a little harder. In some games, not so much. Again, as a parent, you're going to have to watch some of their play to get to some of these deeper writing, to get to some of them that integrate a little bit more with some kind of writing you want them to do. Because you need to understand that game. I'm giving you some real general ones that could work in most games. All games, these will work. These, you got to get to know the game a little bit to ask more specific questions. And if any of you have a specific game your child is playing, put it on there. I'll add it to my May schedule. April's got the play already worked out. But May, I'm looking for what kind of play to look at improving writing. And so I will take a specific game, if you have one, and do some learning on it myself and bring that to you guys. But I also want you to learn a little bit about the game. And I tell you, to be able, first of all, to show interest in the child's game that they already feel like you don't care about and dismiss, to want to actually understand how they play and what's going on in that world. And you're going to sit and watch them play a little bit, and you're going to actually let them do school writing about the game that they're playing. This is really great for that relationship, that parent-child, it's that more that teacher-student relationship. I never like to use the word teacher-student. I feel like that's got kind of a very traditional feel, but you know what I mean. It's not mom and kid. It's the homeschool parent that's working towards this and your child, because you are trying to connect. I want to connect schoolwork to your play, and I want to understand why you love this game so much. I want to understand why every free moment you get, you're racing over to that. And so I'm going to actually use your play to do some writing. So I want to understand how it works. I want to understand how the game is played and what's going on there. And doing that builds this incredible bond. And you're going to actually have kind of a fun time discovering some of these things about the games that they're playing. Now, for some of them, you might want to go, okay, maybe I don't want you to log as many hours on this. But again, look beneath the surface. What is really going on in the game? See if they can find and explain to you what's really going on in the game and the things they're learning. So I opened with this. I'm going to close with it. And that is always, always, always. You can ask the question, and you should be asking, I hate that word should. I'm not going to use should. You can ask this question. I encourage you to ask this question. And that is, what are you learning from this game? What are you learning each time you sit down and play? Okay? What are you learning? And go back to that. What are you learning? Now, again, this could easily be a person-to-person conversation. However, we want it to be about writing. We want them to get to show us their ability in writing, their skill in writing. How do they use pre-writing? How can they dig into this kind of writing from this as a resource? So instead of a book and a story, or instead of a film that you guys are watching together, you're doing this out of a game because they love games. And but again, it comes back to you're looking at their writing. They may use some jargon in their writing that's very specific to gaming and or to their game. And that's going to be great for you to see, wow, they can actually use context-specific vocabulary. And you're going to have to learn those words, especially since they may not be spelled correctly. You're going to get to see how they separate things into paragraphs. All the things that we want to look for in writing, you get to now observe this from their writing about something that they really enjoy and they really have fun with. That's been the basis of this whole series for me. I want you to consider, how do I use play where they're already engaged, they're already willing to press through, they're already exploring and having such a good time, to improve writing. And so I encourage you, take these ideas, go talk with your child about them, see which ones of these they are excited to explain to you. Go observe their play, see which questions you can ask. You don't have to do one of these every day or every week, but if you're looking at, I want to improve my child's ability to explain things on paper. I want to encourage my child with the ability to compare, their comparative thinking. So we're going to compare the worlds of two games, the characters of two games, the enemies of two games, how they level up from level 2 to 3 and from level 12 to 13. So there's just so much you could do of the kind of writing that they need to improve in through their game. And I think you're going to find that they engage on a much deeper level, much more willing to stay with this long term because it's something that they enjoy so much. So please, if you're watching this in replay, give me some comments, some feedback, some specific games you'd love for me to explore in a separate Facebook Live in May in this series. And yeah, I'm so excited to get to have shared with you tonight. You guys have a wonderful Thursday, a fabulous Friday if you're watching this in replay, and an absolutely spectacular weekend. Okay? Talk to you later. Bye-bye.